President Tinubu backtracks on policy decisions on 8,000 naira palliative measures over removal of petrol subsidy. Tonight, we analyze the rationale behind the federal government's U-turn. And the Supreme Court has coming the defense of the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ariwola, over allegations that the CJN had phone conversations with President Tinubu and others to manipulate the Presidential Election Tribunal outcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimaloe in Abuja. Your major stories in the land following the groaning, the pains, the anguish of Nigerians over the increase in virtually every commodity that money can buy in this country, starting from petrol, that drives most of our vehicles in this country, gets a lot of Nigerians talking. I saw a lot of comment on Twitter about how the petrol is being sold, and the amount that is being sold in some part of the country is gotten way over that mark that has been set. And a lot of people are talking, people are groaning. Even those who are supporting the APC or the Renew Hope agenda of President Bola Tinubu are also complaining and talking about these issues. But then, what is the way out? Because the fundamental is that politics into the trash can. Let's focus on the life and the livelihoods of the average Nigerian and the governance and how it affects the lives of our people. And that's what gets us talking again tonight. I will push the conversation. The president said he's heard some of the complaints and the feedback on some of the policy decision that he's made. He's backed out. He's made a U-turn. We analyze the U-turn. Does it make any sense? Where do we go from here? We look at all of those issues. There are allegations also against the #1 judicial officer in the land, and that's the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ariwola, that he had a telephone conversation with the president and some others. The Supreme Court has come in its defense to say that is a blatant lie. It did not happen. We'll look at the implications of all of that tonight. So stick around with me, because first and foremost, before we dig into these issues and these matters for conversation, let's check out your political roundup stories.
The House of Representatives has rejected an amendment to a motion to suspend the recent increase in the pump price of petrol. Members voted against the amendment after the Deputy Speaker, who presided over plenary, questioned if it was in the place of the House to take such a position since pump price is controlled by the market forces. A member, Honorable Tonye, had moved a motion calling for an investigation into the increase in the price of petrol since the removal of subsidy. The House has resolved to carry out an investigation to understand the veracity of the increase. A federal high court in Abuja has removed Musa Mubarak as the governorship candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, over unlawful substitution. Delivering judgment, Justice James Omotosho held that Mubarak's name was fraudulently submitted to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, as NNPP's governorship candidate. He further ordered that Hassan Abdullahi be restored as the party's flag bearer, having lawfully won the primary election of the party conducted on the 16th of April 2023. He held that Abdullahi won the nomination election with 303 votes, while Mubarak came second with only 10 votes. The Governorship Election Petition Tribunal sitting in Enugu State has continued its sitting on the petition filed by the Labour Party and its candidate, Chijoke Edoga, against the election of Dr. Peter Mba as the governor of the state in the matter of the election to the office of the governor of the state. At resumed hearing today, the Deputy Director from the Department of State Services, DSS, Mr. Yamaya Muhammad, who was subpoenaed, gave his evidence at the tribunal. In the evidence of the DSS as contained in the statement on oath of Mr. Muhammad, the secret organization carried out investigation on the alleged National Youth Service Corps certificate forgery and found out that it was duly issued by the NYSC. The DSS had also tendered the investigation report, which was admitted by the tribunal as exhibit. Taraba State Governor Agbuke Fass has has reiterated his administration's resolve to uphold transparency, equity, and justice in his developmental plans in all sectors. The governor stressed that he would provide a diverse and inclusive leadership that will lead to sustainable development of the state. The governor was speaking at an event to inaugurate 21 newly appointed commissioners in the state.
I want to reiterate our administration's unwavering dedication to the development and prosperity of Tarawa State.
South elder statesman Edwin Clark is asking President Bola Tinubu to ignore calls for the scrapping of the 14-year-old Niger Delta amnesty program created to reintegrate militants in the region. In a media chat with journalists in Abuja, Mr. Clark advised the president not to yield to pressure from uninformed Nigerians to avoid other agitations where the country cannot handle in this period of enormous challenges. He adds that the government should not confuse the amnesty program with the massive oil theft carried out by some Nigerians in collaboration with some security agencies.
If they move around and they were causing trouble, the amount of money the federal government produced today could have been reduced. And we have seen it several times.
Thank you, everyone. Brace up. If you got your cup of tea, I think it's time for you to get a seat too, so that you can get the best of this conversation. Let's tell you that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has begun the review and a postmortem of the 2023 general elections like it said it would. Today, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakub, and his national commissioners met with members of the various transport unions which the commission engaged during the 2023 elections. The meeting took stock of how the electoral officers who served as field supervisors carried out their assignments. Let's take a listen to Professor Yakubu.
We need to review the general state of preparedness for the 2023 general election. Number 2, voters' registration process and the associated issues of adequacy, timing, display of the voters' register for claims and objections, clean up of the voters' register, and collection of the PVCs, the permanent voters' card. 4, matters arising from the implementation of the expansion of voter access to polling units. Election day processes with reference to forward logistics in terms of transportation of personnel and delivery of materials to registration area centers and the polling units.
INEC Chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakub, we understand that these processes will go on with the different stakeholders, security, the media, and every political parties as well. Well, you remember that there will be 3 governorship elections in sometimes in November, I think the 18th, in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo State. So there is also need to get to know whether INEC is ready. Well, the Supreme Court of Nigeria has clarified that the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwoola, did not have a telephone conversation with President Bola Tinubu or anyone else on the ongoing presidential election petition on the 2023 election. The Apex Court said Justice Ariwoola neither spoke with Tinubu nor the Director General of the Department of State Services, DSS, with a view to pressurizing the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal on the likely judgment to give in respect of the petitions. The Apex Court's Director of Press and Information, Akande Festus, in a statement issued earlier today, says in view of the rumor currently circulating in the social media space that the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Honorable Justice Olukayode Ariwoola, had a telephone conversation with His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the Director General of the DSS with a view to pressurizing the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal on the likely judgment to give. It is imperative to state clearly that there is no iota of truth in the narrative, as there was no such telephone conversation between the CJN and anyone. The statement went further to say if this current trend of falsehood and mudslinging sustained, our nation may not make the desired progress. We'll get to that matter just in a moment. Let's tell you that in a dramatic turn of event, President Bola Tinubu said his administration will review its earlier plan to distribute monthly cash grants of 8,000 naira to 12 million households for 6 months as part of efforts to assuage the hardship occasioned by fuel subsidy removal. This followed public criticisms of the policy, with the organized labor saying it falls short of the level of intervention required to ease the pains of vulnerable Nigerians. These are some of the highlights in a statement released by Mr. Dele Alake, saying that the president and the administration will review the process, and they are aware of the recent reactions of Nigerians in the policy made over the last few weeks, and also there's going to be that the president had directed to review the cash transfer program, which aimed at giving 8,000 naira to 12 million Nigerians of the poorest households. It also stated that the cash program is not only the item in the whole gamut of the relief package, and the president has now directed that fertilizers and grains should be distributed to about 50 million farmers across the nation. He also instructed the immediate release of some of this support to help in securing food on the table of Nigerians. The president said that he's committed to prioritizing the well-being of Nigerians and has taken previous decisions such as tax reforms to address their concerns. Let's get talking about this matter, everyone, shall we? We'll be taking on some of these issues, especially as it concerns you. I have an expert, someone who knows how the petroleum industry works when we say market forces. What does it mean? The government has said, look, it's now going to be controlled by market forces. Don't forget, the NNPC is now the NNPCL. There is a Petroleum Industry Act in place. And there are those who have warned that if you remove subsidy, prices will go up. Labour has argued that there is no proper plan. They are threatened about the manner in which government is going on with this plan to cushion the effects of the removal of subsidy. 617, that is what we know that it will sell. But how much is it selling in your area? What are the changes that you have experienced since yesterday that this has happened? We get some insight from Mr. Tonye, who is one of the co-founders on the former executive director of Sahara Energy Group. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you, Sharon.
I appreciate it.
Big pleasure.
And of course, I will also be speaking with a human rights lawyer and the former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, is live for us virtually. I think I should speak with Prof first. Prof, it's good to see you. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Well, thanks a lot, Sharon, and good evening, Tonye.
Thank you.
Good to see you, too.
Yeah. Let's begin the conversation, Prof, from let's deal with these allegations against the CJN. And we've seen this over the last few days. But the Supreme Court has said that did not happen. What kind of scenario is playing out where the CJN is being accused of this kind of thing, although the Supreme Court has said it never happened?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a good thing that the Supreme Court has issued a statement to clarify this. My view, however, is that all of this stuff roiling, the system, the judicial system in particular, reflects a trust deficit that has been long in the making. And it's not one thing. It's not an event. It's a build-up. It's been a build-up. And I could just highlight some, if you don't mind. I could highlight some landmarks in that trust deficit. If you remember, in 2011, the Chief Justice then, that was Justice Katsina Alum, and the President of the Court of Appeal were caught in some contretemps over the governorship election petition in the Sokoto State governorship election. And there were allegations that the Chief Justice had put pressure on the President of the Court of Appeal to interfere with the decision. In the end, the President of the Court of Appeal was relieved unceremoniously of his office. And that was the first time Nigerians, it broke to Nigerians that these kinds of backroom allegations actually did occur. Now, so working your way from 2011 to now, you will remember that when the Senator Bulkachuwa said what he said on the floor of the Senate, neither the Chief Justice nor the National Judicial Council said anything. They all ran away. Till now, they have not said a word about that. Instead, Senator Bulkachuwa has gone to court to sue to say that he has impunity and immunity for what he said he did, having initially tried to walk back what he said. Okay? Now, in all of this, don't forget also that this current Chief Justice visited Rivers State in the heat of the election season and said some things and did some things that a Chief Justice should not be seen to be associated with. And he initially denied that he did it. When the tape came out, the clips came out, he started, his spokesperson started inventing adjectives instead of finding verbs to describe what had happened. The cumulative effect of all of this is that people no longer trust judges. I'm not even going to go into the Lawan and Sokoto South senatorial primaries in the APC decision-making, in which, quite honestly, the Supreme Court was egregious. There is no other way to describe that judgment. The point, therefore, is that the judiciary lives with a massive trust deficit. I'm not going to come here now and say, I don't believe the Supreme Court and what they said, but the Supreme Court and judges have got to realize that there is a vast trust deficit, and it is up to them to address it properly and transparently.
I mean, is it fair for, well, whatever has happened, there are allegations against Justice Kaide Ariwola, the sitting CJN. His predecessor, Justice Tanko, there were allegations against him also about issues of corruption. The CJN before Justice Tanko, you remember what happened. There were also allegations of corruption. And you also mentioned the former CJN, Justice Katsina-Alu. I mean, is this mudslinging taken too far? Or
this is not mudslinging, my brother. No, this is not mudslinging, with all due respect. There is no mudslinging. You see, judicial decision-making is not rocket science. Nobody, not even Supreme Court justices, can defend the judgment in the Lawan case. I'm sorry. Not even Supreme Court justices can defend making Hope Uzodinma the governor of Imo State, making the fourth person number one. So we've got to admit there is a problem. There is a problem with judicial credibility. And this credibility crisis arises almost always in party political cases and election petitions. And I said so when I addressed the Ikeja Bar on the 15th of June. It goes back to the 1979 election. Since we have been in the presidential system, judges have increasingly played a role in adjudicating election disputes. Up to 2003, I think it was tolerable. After 2003, we went into a new territory in which judges began to decide who won and lost elections, started adding and subtracting numbers. And with that, the levels of money being thrown at judges in order to buy decisions began to change. The corruption, therefore, and this is not about saying this is about judges alone, because politicians are involved, senior lawyers are involved. The ICPC has in fact certified that this is the case. That there was an ICPC report on this in 2020. So I'm not manufacturing anything here. And judges have a responsibility. It is not mudslinging. People cannot trust the judiciary anymore. That is fact. And there are facts, credibly attested facts, to support that.
And that's a disaster, because the judiciary is supposed to be the hope of the common man.
It could also be the rope that hangs the common man.
So how do we fix this? This is a major problem. When executive has a problem, it should run to the judiciary. When the legislature has a problem, it should run to the judiciary. When the people, the citizens, have a problem, they run to the judiciary. But when you, as a senior lawyer, a professor, and a human rights lawyer, speaks like this, it gives some of us some worry.
I'm not the only person who's spoken like this. Professor Wabweze, who is the oldest and most senior lawyer in Nigeria today, has written this in a book published in 2009. And he said things I cannot even say on national TV, right? It's in a book. I can give you the title and I give you the page 147 of, this was actually in a lecture he delivered at the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, for which there were sanctions levied against the leadership of the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies at the time, because of the frankness of his assessment of what was going on with the judiciary. And things have cratered since then. And you see, when this kind of trust deficit exists, and the Chief Justice presides first as the chairperson of the Federal Judicial Service Commission, and then as the chairperson of the NJC to appoint his son as a judge of the Federal High Court, you've got a problem.
How do we get out of here? How do we fix this problem, Prof?
The Chief Justice should not be appointing his son a judge of the Federal High Court, no matter how great the son is. What about that? What about saying, okay, you know what? This young man applied, and so I recuse myself, and I will never be involved in this. And I set an example. But no. So you have two sons of Chief Justice Kutigi who are judges who were judges, and you have all these children of all of these judges. Look, there is nothing hereditary about judges.
If they were appointed judge on merit.
Let me finish. There is nothing hereditary about judging, and judging is not a sexually transmitted condition, so that husbands will be inseminating their wives with the capacity to be judges, and men will be inseminating their mistresses with the capacity to be judges, and fathers will be producing sons and daughters who are judges. Justice Bulkachuwa's daughter, Justice Alta's daughter, the Odeles. No, it is not like that. And we've got to say enough is enough. As a country, this is unacceptable. The buying of the judiciary and the compromising of the judiciary in this manner is why these kinds of allegations are being traded. It's got to stop.
How do we fix it, Prof?
The senior judges should stop doing insider trading with judicial appointments. What about that? The members of the NJC should stop doing insider trading with judicial appointments. What about that? Until people have the sense that judges are actually competent, credible, and appointed not because their fathers, their mothers, their husbands, their boyfriends and girlfriends are on the bench, this problem is going to deepen.
Well, I imagine that some of these people, on their own merit, have gotten acclaim and they've reached that level to be able to aspire. And I don't think that there is going to be a problem because you have a father or a parent or a family member who is a judge who cannot aspire to be a judge too. It might in fact be an inspiration. Would it be fair to paint them with one brush, Prof? To say because you have a child that has been promoted to a judge, it has been influenced?
You see, I think that's the wrong question. The right question is, are these other people who are as qualified, if not better qualified, getting at least as fair a shot as these people are? That's the better question. You see, if the constitutional baseline really is not a high bar. It is 10 years at the bar. There is no, when you read the Nigerian Constitution, it does not actually say that a person who gets to be appointed a judge should be a person of integrity. No, it does not say that. It does not say the person should have skill or qualification. The only qualification is 10 years at the bar to get to the High Court. So if I'm the Chief Judge or the Chief Justice, and my son or daughter or my mistress is 10 years at the bar, I could easily shove them on. Now, that does not mean that they are therefore necessarily qualified to be judges. It's just that they are connected to me, okay? That is the problem here. So it's not enough to say, oh, they're qualified. There's no bar, exactly. Now, when you then begin to look at the numbers and the trends, it is absolutely the fact that something dreadful is happening. Judicial insider dealing is going on. If this happened on the stock market, the leadership of the stock market will be prosecuted.
Can the judiciary purge itself? Is it possible? An internal mechanism for the judiciary to clear its own name?
The judiciary has set up this decision in Justice Nganjiwa's case, which basically guarantees insider dealing, that unless the NJC strips a judge, you cannot do anything. And that is how Justice Ophelia Jumogobia, who was charged, Justice Yunusa, who was charged. You see, the fact that I can even come on national TV and be mentioning names of judges who were charged to court credibly, and the cases failed on technicalities rather than on substance, is itself a problem. Don't you get it? This could not have happened 30 years ago. I'll be saying this judge in this particular case was charged with collecting money from senior lawyers, and then the case was not decided on merits, but was decided on a technicality. How does that sound to you, my brother? Does it sound right? Does it sound proper?
Prof, some of you who are senior members in the bar, you have a lot of work to do, isn't it? But let me take you away from the judiciary for a moment, and let me take you to issues of policy and governance and the rights of the average citizen. You're aware of the groaning and the complaint, the pains of the average Nigerian about the change in the price, the hike in the price of petrol, which is affecting virtually everything you touch in this country that has a price on it. Give us an understanding of the position of the federal government. They said, we are backtracking about the 8,000 naira to 12 million households, a poor household, over 6 months. That Nigerians have clamored and have heard, and are backtracking. The government had made a policy backtrack on that. What is your view of that situation with the federal government?
I read it as you read it. The policy is silly, and that's putting it mildly. But the thing, you see, government should not make this kind of policy on a hoof. The announcement at the presidential inauguration on the 29th of May was an ad-lib. It was not in the text of the president of the inaugural address on that day. It was just invented, okay? Now, so having invented it, government is now working its way back to where it should have started, which was properly deliberate on the implications of what it was doing. Now, and I've said it, this is not rocket science again. There is nothing like removing subsidy in the kind of economy we have, because you're talking about a product that we are not producing, which we can well produce, but we are not producing. We are importing all of this, right? And so you've got three issues here. One is we are importing this product. The second is that our currency is depreciating in value. And the third is that we are trying to regulate this product. Nobody should tell me that this is about market forces. No, we're actually regulating the price of the product. So when your currency is failing and the product is being imported and you're regulating the price, the three cannot square. And so as long as the currency continues to lose value, somebody will have to be making up the costs that arise as a result of that. And so what happened on the 29th of May, the value of the dollar, dollar to the naira is different from what it is now. And because of that, there is a gap to be made up in the pricing mechanisms. And this is the problem we've got. What government should have done, it seemed to me, was to engage in a deliberative process. Rather than do that, maybe excitement of, handling power got the better of those who were involved. And this is basically what we have. It's messy.
Let's take a breather. Prof, stay with me. We'll go on a break, and when we come back, we'll be hearing also from Mr. Tonye Cole. He's been a major player at that in the petroleum sector, and someone also who aspired to be a governor of Rivers State, an oil-producing state, has an idea of where we are, the problem, the policy of government, and the quagmire we find ourselves, and perhaps, maybe, we can talk about the way out. We'll be right back, everyone. Stay with me. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. We've been talking about a host of issues. We touched on the allegations against the CJN, Justice Odinkalu, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, a former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, has been speaking with us. Thank you so much, Prof. And also I have with me Mr. Tonye Cole, who is the governorship candidate of the APC in Rivers State and a co-founder of the Sahara Energy Group, a major player in the oil and gas sector. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Chairman.
Either we like it or not, I'd proceeded some time ago to say, look, we are in a very critical stage as a people, as a nation, very delicate. Anything that goes wrong in our economy can trip it in such a way. And the warning is that we could go Venezuela, God forbid, but things are really, really in a dire situation. For you as a player, when you heard market forces, is it a kind of market forces that you were expecting that is playing out right now?
You know, Sean, so market forces is an economic term. And what it means is that when you have a product, there are other things that will affect that product, which means most people believe that when you do things like this, it will be bad for a little while, shaky for a little while, and then it will begin to improve. Now, it's the market forces that should make it improve. If the market forces go contrary, it will get worse. And one of the things that we are seeing now is a contrary market force. What is the first area of where the challenge is coming from? And I think Prof alluded to it. It's the dollar exchange rate. When you are a nation that does not produce much, and everything you do, remember you have petrol on this side, but everything you do is seeking dollars to import. You import a shirt, import a cap, import your shoes, import toothpick, import whatever. Forget the petrol that you're importing. Leave that one for now. Where you are importing everything else, you're putting pressure on the dollar. Once you begin to put pressure on the naira, and the dollar rate begins to increase, you come back to that issue that you are importing petrol. Now, remember that there's no subsidy now. Market forces on this side are now affecting the price of petrol in dollars. When you then translate it back to naira, you get what you're seeing today. And who feels the brunt? It's the people who have no business with naira and kobo. With dollars. The people whose business is in naira and kobo. But everything that is affecting them is what is happening in the dollar market.
Unfortunately, we measure, even the pains and the suffering of Nigeria, we measure it in dollars.
Which is a problem.
Our importation, we measure in dollars.
Exactly.
Even there are some hotels in Abuja here that they collect dollars. So, I mean, it's a malady, isn't it?
It
the
is.
manner in which our economy has been operated has gone on over the years. Now, and you are the expert here. When we seek your counsel tonight, give us an understanding the anomaly that could go on in an economy that is oil reliant. And you want the market forces to operate or to drive it, but yet you don't produce the fine product in Nigeria. How much of danger have we entered into? Okay,
so the production of petroleum products in Nigeria is just one piece of this gigantic puzzle. If you mentioned a country which we hope we will never get into, you mentioned Venezuela. Venezuela was oil rich. Venezuela was producing. Venezuela ran into a problem and all of that. Why did it run into a problem? And these are the things that we need to look at. There's nothing new under the sun. People will think that the solution today is to fix the refineries and ensure that you are producing petrol in Nigeria. Is that going to solve the problem? It will only solve a bit of the problem. It may not gallop as quickly as it has, but it will still continue if you don't deal with the other issues.
Even if Warri refinery, Port Harcourt refinery,
Absolutely.
and Dangote refinery works,
yes,
our story won't change.
Not dramatically. You know why? One, every time you have to do a maintenance, you have to import a part. In countries where these things stay stable, they manufacture bolts, manufacture bearings, they manufacture all the moving parts that you have to continue changing in country so that you don't have to continue importing those things. There's no pressure on that. These are little things that operate. Every refinery is a moving part. And those moving parts, if you have to ensure that you are going to be importing to fix those things, you have a problem. A major issue is that the rich are very rich, the poor are very poor, and you don't have a middle class. Who is your middle class? Your middle class are your manufacturers. Your middle class are your SMEs that do the small bolts and nuts and bolts.
The one that connect the lower class and the upper class.
And so we must create a middle class. Unfortunately, today, one of the biggest problems we have in Nigeria is the absolute decimation of a middle class. And that's what you have.
Dangote should be a good news in a natural sense.
To an extent, yes.
To an extent. But our story may not change.
No.
The pricing may not be so much different.
No,
so it's bad news anyways.
If you don't deal with productivity. You see, we don't talk about productivity. And that's what we need to talk about. What's happening in your manufacturing sector? How are we providing services that will keep our refineries going? If Dangote has to rely on importation at the dollar price that we have today to make sure that his refinery continues to run, the price of petrol will not come down.
I mean, when President Tinubu went on the podium, and I remember he said it in Yoruba language, in Ogun State precisely, he said it. He said, price of fuel will go up. And he said, for Kambale, it will come down. Is that realistic?
No, it's very realistic. It is very realistic.
But not in the immediate.
No, none of this is immediate. So it's very realistic, provided you do certain things. And one of the things that you must begin to do is ensure that there is a productivity culture within Nigeria. What is putting pressure on your foreign exchange? Answer that question. The issue of foreign exchange is that we import almost everything that we don't need. Things that you can manufacture here. You will import glass. We can make glass here. We import tables. We import furniture. We import doors. We import building materials.
If you were Bola Tinubu today, what would you do precisely in terms of the level of importation that we have?
Oh, you have to deal with that. So the first thing that you do, first of all, is that you go to your existing manufacturing bases. Where are they? Kano, Kaduna, Aba, and all that. Go there and support that industry massively. Let them begin to produce what they would have been bringing in and produce it in such a way that you are using Naira to make Naira to buy Naira. Dollar doesn't come in. Make sure you do that. What then happens is that you are reducing the pressure on that. The second thing you do is look at the areas where you can earn foreign exchange without even leaving Nigeria. And there's a huge market here. Which one is that? You have fintech. You have young people who are doing technology today. They are sitting down in Nigeria. They're not moving anywhere. And they're earning foreign exchange outside. They're providing services in America, in Singapore, in China, and wherever from here. They're spending Naira. They're earning dollar. Boost that economy. Boost it.
Would you, for example, Mr. Cole, suggest that we should heavily tax those who are buying and who are in love with importation? It's been in this country when a former Minister of Agriculture said there are those who even import pizza through British Airways into this country. I mean, there are a lot of controversy around that statement. But it does look like there are a lot of people who are in love with importation. Vehicles, for example. There is the innocent of this world. There are a few other guys who are coupling and making sure that there are vehicles that are produced here. If you have your way some way, would you shut out the importation or you tax it heavily to encourage locally produced vehicles?
So I like the word you said, to encourage. If your policy is not first directed at encouraging, then whatever you do with shutting down, you just create a route for smuggling. You see, and that, do you understand where I'm going?
So you have to be tactful.
You must be tactful. So if I say I'm going to encourage you to start building tablets or solar panels and all of that, and as a result of that, I'm going to tax or prevent the importation of computers because I want to do it. The minute I start putting a heavy tax on importation, but I am not supporting the manufacturing and the supply route to schools and all of that of the tablets that I'm building here in Nigeria, guess what happens? I've just created this massive black market. So people will start smuggling. Customs officers and immigration officers and those people at the borders will become billionaires. So all of these things must happen. You as a government must decide first and foremost that, where's my pressure point? We already have people who are building these things in Nigeria. Now let us support and encourage them. How do you support and encourage them? The government in itself is one of the biggest supporters or promoters of goods. They can send those goods to schools. They can ensure that there are policies that make sure that you purchase or you distribute these things that are manufactured here. What are you doing essentially? You are giving them time for them to consolidate, become bigger, and begin to export. You can open up, you have African Free Trade Continental Agreement right now. Open it up for Nigerian products. You have ECOWAS, open it up for Nigerian products. That's what you need to do.
Let's get back to this matter of oil. I mean, it has driven us here to this point on looking inward and what this government must do. The fact remains that from what you have posited and what your position tonight, it does look like this pain will go for a while.
It will be there, unfortunately.
Do you think that this price will go lower? Because from 500, do you see it getting anything below 500?
Not immediate. Not in the immediate time.
So Nigerians need to start learning how to tighten their belt, even tighter than it is right now.
You see, and that is where the challenge is for the government. Let's take, when the palliative for 8,000 was announced, right? What was dollar price? So nobody shouted too much. Some may agree with it, some may not agree with it, but 8,000 naira back then may just look as if it would be able to do something. 30 days later, 45 days later, dollar has gone to something else. 8,000 naira is now looking as if it's nothing.
It's less than $10.
Good. So now people are asking, now what will 8,000 naira do? So you step back. Is the answer for you to come back and say that, okay, you know what, I'm going to do 20,000 naira? If you say that, people say, oh, great, you have increased it for now. There's something called inflation. If you have not addressed the problems, in another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 20,000 naira will now look as if it's useless. We have to be very careful of what happened in Venezuela, what happened in Zimbabwe, what happened in Argentina, what happened in Italy. All of these things are real. They happened where inflation became uncontrollable.
Astronomical.
Yeah. And can we get there? If we are not careful, yes. But if we take cue from what happened in those countries, we look at ourselves and say that, what do we need to do to
historically,
address
Mr. Cole, if you look at our inflation rate, less than 8 years ago, it's gone from less than 2 digits to 20-something digit. 20-something percent. Now, you look at unemployment rate, it's gone to over 30%. It looks gradual, but it's astronomical. How we have moved.
But it's reversible.
It's reversible. But are we making the right decision? Is the government doing the right thing? That is the question.
So that's what the economic team is going to do. Remember that one of the things that...
Do we have an economic team? Not just yet.
You have economic advisors in place. Okay, and the economic advisors will be looking at all of this, and they must advise the president on the reality of the economic issues that we have. And market forces in the world, going back to the word market forces, is a realistic term that must be answered. What is pushing it up? What is pushing it down? And how do we control...
And it's in the hand of the capitalists right now. Capitalists?
Why?
Well, the marketers now, they sell and they want to make them as much money.
No, Shaun, I wouldn't put it out like that, because again, government has policies. Those policies, what government has said as far as subsidy is concerned is that we're no longer involved in that. Once you do that, then you must address the issues that will deal with the forces around
because the
subsidy.
Prices are international.
Yes,
the
exactly.
marketers will tell you this is how much we bought it.
But that's
the landing cost of it is over 500 naira. That's what the marketers are telling us.
But that's exactly what it is. You can't dispute that. Unfortunately, that's what it is.
And government has little or no control.
No, government has control.
Let me get back to Prof. Prof, give us an understanding. This palliative, these measures to cushion the effect, no matter what the situation is, the role of government is to help the poor, to help the citizen of the country. From your own point of view, we heard on this program yesterday what the NLC president said. He said he's lost confidence in the kind of conversation they've been having with the federal government. And they gives a thumbs down on the kind of decision and the policies of government. You are hearing how these monies are going to be shared. Judiciary, these legislature, these and all what have you. Where do we go from here? Because Venezuela, as sad and as bad as situation is not far off. And it's a bad scenario to think of in the first place. Prof.
No, so I think the problem is not just, on the... Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead, please.
Do you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Part of the problem is, a central part of the problem is that the people who are in power are socializing the pains of their policies and privatizing the gains of what they propose. So if you look at the presidency, the number of domestic, Buhari had 16 advisors approved. Tinubu has increased them to 20.
Oh, no.
His convoy has increased.
Prof, the connection is so horrible. Yes. I don't know why it's happening at this time. The connection, we can barely hear you. The connection is so horrible. Okay, let's try to see if it will get better. But Mr. Cole, in trying to wrap up now, where do we go from here? Okay. So in terms of the policy, the measures that will cushion the effect, the ability of the citizen to be able to buy, to be able to spend, has been drastically dropped.
Yeah. So inflation is an issue, and we must deal with inflation. Now, inflation is a basket of things, and one of the principal areas is food. Your food basket. What is the food security that you're putting in? I see that the president is working on giving fertilizers, giving crops and all of that. That will take time for harvest. But fair enough, you need to deal with that aspect of it. The next aspect of it has to do with transportation. What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about fares for people going to work, coming back, and all of that? What do you need to do? And so government has to begin to work on issues of how do they transport people? How do they move people, masses from one place to another? Now, you are dealing for a short period with a form of reverse subsidy by giving people, which is what the palliatives would have been, giving people direct to their pocket in the areas that affect them. The question, and the big question, elephant in the room, is what are you going to do with the dollar? Because until you begin to address that aspect, we have an issue.
If the president declared state of emergency on food security, if you were in issue, would you declare state of emergency on the economy?
Yes. Absolutely. That's where we are. We need proper economists to sit down, look at what has happened in other countries, look at our situation in Nigeria, and make a determination that we are not going to get there. No matter what happens, we are not going to be a Zimbabwe, we are not going to be a Venezuela, we are going to be in Nigeria that we can be proud of. How do we do it? Yes.
Prof, we have just about 30 seconds to wrap up. What is your final thought? I think we can hear and see you now.
I don't know whether you hear me.
I can hear you now. Yes, Prof.
We cannot make any progress if the costs of government are deliberately being increased and you're telling people to address belt lines that no longer exist. The administration is pushing up appointments, the number of people they're appointing increasing, their costs are increasing, and they want people to be paying the costs. It's not going to happen. The first thing government has to do is save money on the cost of government. That is where the money will come from. And then they will tell people they are serious about these things.
Professor Odinkalu, thank you so much. Former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, and Mr. Tonye here, co-founder of the Sahara Energy and governorship candidate of the APC in Rivers State. Thank you so much indeed. It's a pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Prof. Always a pleasure.
Indeed, Nigeria belongs to all of us. We know that it might be a tough path, but we must work it and put our shoulders up. Government must do its own part. Citizen also needs to support. But then, if they ask us to support, government needs to show capacity to be able to lead. That's how we draw the curtains on the program tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. God bless Nigeria.